start. So we were dealing with thousands of gallons 10 years ago in the recovery every year. We actually recovered 84,000 gallons total. All the geotechnical people that the hospital has hired over the years, and based on the records from the purchase of oil in the beginning, the estimate is there was about 100,000 gallons of original spill, and the free product recovered is about 85,000 gallons. Back in 2012, when we did a summary of all this for the Maryland Department of the Environment, we were able to determine at that point that we had to move into a different phase of remediation. Pump and treat recovered a lot of product, but now after, I'd say 2.5 years running, we were just getting trace amounts, measurable amounts, detect levels, some non-detect levels, very, very low concentrations, and we weren't recovering free product. So
Can you explain what pump and treat is?
Yeah.
How that works?
Pump and treat really serves two purposes. You construct wells and you put pumps in them and you pump the water out. And when you have free product, a lot of what you're pumping out, you do oil separation and you separate the oil out, and then you run the water from the system that's remaining through carbon filters, and you remove smaller concentrations of the petroleum products. But the other reason for the pump and treat is it artificially creates a zone of depression around the pump field. It's not one pump, it's multiple pumps. And in that zone of depression, you change the gradient so that the groundwater no longer moves in its natural direction, which would be towards the town's wells. It creates a gradient that moves it into where the pumping range is. So by doing that, you keep the water from migrating down towards the town's wells. And so I guess in 2012, the department wanted us, even though we only had trace amounts, if that's the right term, to keep the pump and treat system on until we could give them a new plan. Part one of the plan was to turn the pumps off for a period of time and measure all the down gradient wells and to see if we were getting anything any different, if the concentrations would go up. And we started that, and I think it was like July 2012. And for 10 months, we were just getting trace amounts in everything. And we thought that we had finished the job. There wasn't much of anything left that was endangerment to anything. And that we could move from a remediation phase to a closeout phase. In the 10th and 11th and 12th months, the concentrations came back again. Under the terms of our agreement with MDE, we turned the pump and treat system back on immediately, which would reverse anything that was moving down gradient. And it would also recover anything that had built up. Let me tell you what's actually happening. It's not like there's a problem there one day and it's not the next. We convinced ourselves that it's not naturally in the water column when the pump and treat system is on. And that is because there's still oil product in the soils. And when you're running the pump and treat system, the water table is lowered significantly. So for those 10 months, when we turned the water system off and we're measuring water out of the test wells or the monitoring wells, we weren't getting any high results, and that's because the groundwater wasn't in contact with the soils that still had some stain in them or still had some product in them. So we went back, and I guess it was in August of 2013, realized that what we really had was a situation where the original spill had retained some level of product in the soils that were never cleaned. So when rainwater goes through it, it rinses some of it out. So you get some concentrations in the wells from that. Or when the water table goes up and comes in contact, and you know on the eastern shore it goes up and down, it would wash some of it out. So we had a lot of discussions with our consulting team and a lot of discussions with the Maryland Department of the Environment. The University of Maryland had actually run into somebody that dealt with these kind of situations for a living. He just happened to be doing a stay over in this town, and they met him and they connected him with me and the consulting team, and we did a number of interviews with him, reviewed his work. His company's called Ivy International. They travel all over the world, and all they deal with is these kind of remediation cases with petroleum product where the problem has been going on for years and there's a small residual left in the soils that has to be cleaned up. What they do is inject soaps into the wells, leave it there for 24 hours, let it rinse the soils, and then they pump it out the next day. And you usually have to do this for some days, sometimes some weeks. So we proposed a plan. MDE evaluated Ivy International, their history, their qualifications, their experience, and their product that they used. Their common everyday soaps that they have a patent for, it's a blend. We got an underground injection control permit to let us inject these soaps into the ground. At the city's request, this was a patented product, so we provided the information under agreement to the Department of the Environment. We gave them the list of chemicals. MDE locked it up under key, satisfied themselves that these were safe chemicals, gave us the approval, and then asked us to go back and to give them a new plan, which we did in August, that would use the Ivy International product and go into phase 2. So we've been in a pump and treat for, I don't know, a dozen or more years, and now we were going to go in and do a plan to inject, these are called surfactants, that's the chemical name for soaps, and try to wash the stain out of the soil and clean it up once and for all. MDE thought our plan was aggressive, and in an aggressive plan you have to worry about it doing too good a job and the soils being cleaned too fast and the stuff migrating off-site. So MDE, in answer to the town's letter, suggested we do a pilot study first, and that the wells in the pilot study only be within the realm of the pump and treat system. In other words, we would turn the pump and treat off, let the water table come up, add the soaps, 24 hours later take them out, and then monitor the wells in the immediate area for 3 months, do a report to MDE, and then they would determine whether or not the pilot was successful. And that's where we're leaving it. We don't want to have a contest with anybody, you know. We want to get all the consultants on the exact same page. However we can do that, that's what we want to do.
As far as the transparency goes, and the timeframes that were outlined in the speech that you just gave, this hasn't been a transparent process the whole time. There have been issues with that, including since the meeting in the fall, when everything was put on hold until March. Because there were documents that we were supposed to get, as outlined in the minutes of the meeting, that happened, what, October? In the minutes of the meeting, there were documents listed in there that were supposed to be provided to the town, and we never got any of that. We were supposed to be copied on the lab results, and we didn't get those till after we got the letter in March
I think we explained
on
that.
responses from MDE. All I'm saying is it hasn't been quite so transparent. We've been asking what was in Ivysol, and the answer that we've been getting is we can't tell you what's in it. It's patented. We can't tell you what's in it. This is what's in it. This is from the United States Patent Office. A patent in the United States is granted, it grants a person exclusive rights to use that chemical or process in exchange for making the information public. The only patent that doesn't have to be made public are things that deal with national security. So after all this time of asking for it, I don't know why anybody didn't say that's public information. I printed this out on the web.
He told us it was a protected patent, and we protected it under the terms of our agreement with them. And MDE said they were gonna protect it too. As long as we gave them the information, they satisfied themselves that there's nothing in it. And we did it. We stayed within the letter of the law according to MDE.
My point being, that's not the law. This is public information.
We have
that is
attorneys for
freely
that.
available.
We have attorneys for that.
It is a combination of 6 different things that are used in different combinations depending on which process is being applied. Anyone interested, it's patent 6447 207, and you can get it from the United States Patent Office. Has a lot of information on there, not only on the chemical names, but the chemical components. That being said, I also looked up the MSDS sheets, and there's nothing there that appears to be hazardous. But we're working with our geologist to verify that. Since I haven't had this that long, we're still working. What we've been told, and right now I have no reason to say it's wrong, Ivisol is a completely biodegradable product made up of, I'll say mostly alcohol compounds. And there is no expectation at this point that even if it were put into the ground and not pumped back out, that would ever reach the water plant.
I think the point here is that it's critical moving forward that transparency is tantamount to this process. I mean, this is kind of unprecedented, to be honest. I mean, I don't know that it's ever been tried in an area where there's drinking wells for an entire municipality at stake. And so it's very, very serious, you know, a very serious issue for everybody,
I think
including
MDE takes their job pretty seriously.
I agree, but when they turn pumps off and don't tell the municipality that contaminants are heading downhill towards their wells, that's not a really great way to set an example for us that we can trust them.
Well, Ken and I were moving forward in a spirit of openness, and I think we've shared that.
I agree, right now, this is a good start. It's nice.
But I have a question, and that has to do with, it's not simply transparency and information technical, as David suggested, it's process. And I'd like to know what's driving this process. And is there some kind of way that you all have leverage as our town council to have more input into the process with MDE? Is there a consent decree, for example, if there's been corrective action? This is going back 30 years. So what's the process here, and why are we entering into it at this late date? I have been aware, I mean, many of us are, I think, of the situation, and we're certainly sympathetic to the hospital. There's no doubt about that. But I think that we do need to understand a very well thought out process for how we get from here to a solution that, and I appreciate the commitment to the town that you'll all be in agreement, but what is going to be that process?
Well, this is an enforcement case, Mayor and Council, and under an enforcement case, it's an action that the department took against the hospital when the spill occurred. So typically, enforcement cases are not public hearing processes. They're not. It's a case against somebody and they're responding to the department, which is what we've been doing. But that's just what it is. We're the ones that have had a situation that violated state code. They wrote us up. We're supposed to respond. We submit things, they approve it, we implement it. But we have proposed a consent agreement to the department, and we're drafting it. And we're committed to letting the town have input to it before we do anything with it.
Okay.
We've hired Mike Powell, who was the previous principal counsel of MDE, as the university's private legal counsel in this. He proposed a consent agreement. Ken said it needed to be an open process. We presented it to MDE that way, so he's drafting it. It'll come back to the town for review, and then we'll submit it to MDE. And it'll deal with the pilot study, what happens if you get this result, what do we do next? It'll deal with, we haven't seen it yet. It's still in preparation.
And ultimately, a judge makes an agreement.
No,
There's
it's
no
an
judge.
administrative consent agreement between the department and the hospital. And typically, they're not third parties involved, but we've committed that the town will be involved in the review of the consent agreement.